Welcome to the Deerfield Theater podcast. In this season, we're talking about Theater D's production of Our Town. In case you're tuning in and didn't already know, Deerfield Theater is putting on a production of Our Town this March and April of 2025. And performances start Friday, March 28th and go through Sunday, April 13th. So while you're listening to this episode, visit the link in the show notes and get your tickets. Without further delay, here's the episode. I am thrilled to have with me today on this episode of the Deerfield Theater podcast, Geoff Isaac, performing as stage manager in Our Town. Welcome to the show.
Thank you, Matthew. It's a real pleasure to be here.
Well, just in case folks haven't seen you perform before or don't know you, go ahead and give a little bit of background for our listeners on who you are.
Well, I've been an actor in the Chicago area for about 40 years now, and I've done a variety of types of theater, musical theater and non-musical theater, and mostly stage work, and rather than film or television or anything, but in both the city and the suburbs, both professional theater and community theater for a long time now.
So maybe if they don't know it, they've probably seen something that you've been in.
Perhaps,
They don't recognize it.
perhaps, yes. And of course, the opportunity to do the stage manager in Our Town is an actor's dream. So it was very exciting to get this opportunity.
Yeah, like I was saying too before we clicked record, that my story, my journey of learning about Our Town, everybody that I've had on the show keeps saying, oh, the stage manager. And so there's a lot of allure, and I'm very excited to see Our Town for the first time and see the role that you play. So then let's say a little bit more from the stage manager himself. What tell us a little bit about Our Town, without giving too much away, and the role that your character plays in the show.
Well, it's a play that has been called the greatest American play ever written, and one could quibble, I suppose, with that and name some others, but it's certainly, in my view, one of the greatest, at the very least, certainly on the Mount Rushmore of American plays. Thornton Wilder, of course, is the playwright.
Yeah.
And he based it on his youth. It's a fictional town called Grover's Corners, New Hampshire, but it's based on some, and it takes place, although it takes place around the turn of the last century, early 1900s. It's incredible. One of the great things about it, and one of the things that makes great art, is the timeless aspect of it. And certainly there are some things about the town that are specific to that era, but there's a universality to human experience that is captured so perfectly in this play that it could be any time period, and it relates so well to life in any era. And I think people who have not seen it, or have not seen it recently at least, will really be surprised at how timely it is.
Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm. The nature of your role in the show.
Yeah, the stage manager, the conceit of the show is it takes place on a relatively bare stage where people are consciously putting on a play, and the stage manager is the conduit for the audience. He speaks directly to the audience and describes what they're going to see and puts it in a context for a modern audience. The play was first produced in the 1930s, so what was modern in the 1930s is certainly different than what's modern now. But as I said, it really has to do with the humanity of stages of life, childhood and growing up and marrying and beyond. And so the stage manager puts that in a context and really describes the story to the audience. And it's one of those roles that it's appropriate for any age, any gender or race of actor. And so it's a role that I think anybody who's ever acted would really yearn to do, and I'm really enjoying that aspect of it. But it's a character that has to establish a rapport with the audience and has a relationship with the audience, and I think sees the story happening at the same time as the audience does.
Yeah, I mean, Jeff, I'm going to add it to my list of roles that I want to do now
Yeah,
after hearing you
absolutely.
describe it like that. Like just narrator is just a role that I love, right? I'm doing the podcast for our
There you
for
go.
Deerfield Theater,
Yeah,
right?
yeah,
Like
absolutely. And
like that is, I don't even want to be lead. I like necessarily like that's the type of like that like high level overview and like guiding the audience. Oh, that just sounds like it could be such a fun role.
it is a lot of fun. And there have been a lot of theories over the years put forth about who is the stage manager? Is it like a godlike figure, or is
Hmm.
it a stand-in for Thornton Wilder himself? Both of those
Mm.
things, both of those theories would find some support in the text, and would find some support in the critical analyses that people have done of the text. But in my view, I think it's more interesting as an actor anyway. It's more interesting to play it as someone who's discovering the aspects of the story at the same time the audience is. So it's not an omnipotent figure in my view, although some people would disagree, like I say, and I don't think it's and certainly some of the things that the stage manager expresses and some of his views of life obviously reflect Thornton Wilder's views of life, but that's natural because of the author piece relationship. But I think it's a character that is far more interesting, not only to play as an actor, but also a character that's far more interesting for the audience to relate to when it's someone who is making discoveries along the way, just like the audience
Well, I could see why this would make a great book for an English class then if you could have those kind of those kind of discussions, right? So you hear the listeners go and see the show and then come and debate each other on like on what who was the stage manager? Who
it's
actually was that?
it's a very interesting topic to think about. I think people who have read this play in school, for example, but have never seen a production of it, should definitely try to see a production, and hopefully this production, our production, because the, there are experiences and discoveries that just don't jump out at you on the page that you see when you see it staged and you see it inhabited by real people. And it's really a way to experience our town that just a reading of the script will not give you. And the other type of person that should come, I think, are people who have seen it and think they're so familiar with it. And oh boy, I don't know if I could possibly discover anything else about our town at this point. I I would challenge you to come and see it, and I think you would. I really think you would, because of the and I think there are some very fine performances that you'll experience in this cast and fine direction of the play. But I think just in the retelling for yourself and in the re-experiencing of it for yourself, you'll discover new things.
Yeah. Speaking of, well, at the time of recording anyway, we're only a few weeks out from opening night. So how have rehearsals been going and how's the show all coming together?
Yeah, it's been a lot of fun. It's an interesting play to rehearse because the stage is not full of scenery like most plays you go to. It's a relatively bare stage with just some tables and chairs for most of the evening. And so the spatial aspects of the stage, to me anyway, kind of reflects what your how your mind works when you experience a piece of theater, or when you read a book, an interesting story or something. You know how your mind, you see it in your mind, and your mind's eye creates a world that is not dictated to you on the page. And this play works in much the same way, because you're not being told exactly what everything looks like. The stage manager directs the audience about how the town is set out and says, this is Main Street here, and here is a row of shops, and here's the school, and that sort of thing. But it's really up to the audience manager to help the audience create that, but to know at the same time that everybody's picture is going to be a little different. And what you bring to it as an audience member really plays into the experience as well.
Right. It's almost like a halfway point between a book and a live performance then, where you get to still use your imagination as though you were reading a book, but you're visually experiencing and audibly experiencing the story.
Yeah, well put. That's a great way to describe it. And it is a lot like that. And to me, that makes it more fun. Not that theater with elaborate sets isn't fun too, in a different way, but this is a lot of fun because of that aspect of the theater of the mind is at work.
Yeah, and it's something that I've seen now in the 3+ years that I've been involved with Deerfield Theater, that Theater D in particular has gone like ebbed and flowed with that, right? Previously it was Noises Off, and you want to talk about elaborate sets, right? For last year's Theater D production. I mean, that's about as elaborate as it gets. And then before that, it was Inherit the Wind, which was also a more like Our Town, a more subdued set, a more focus on the characters and the story. Not that a production with a crazy set, you're not focusing on the characters, but the set is also then a character.
Yeah.
And it does draw some attention.
Yeah, definitely in Noises Off it is. And you're right, the Inherit the Wind, the stage was set in a far more abstract way, and the Noises Off just demands a specific practical, usable set of two different levels. And Theater D pulled it off in both cases just expertly. It's one of the things, I'm sorry to interrupt, but it's one of the things over the years doing both professional theater and community theater. There are with some people an assumption that professional theater is going to be better and community theater is going to be less professional, but that has not been my experience. And Theater D is one of those groups that is able to bring a very professional caliber of production. And as you pointed out, Noises Off, everything from Noises Off to Inherit the Wind and now to Our Town, they're able to bring an expertise too that's a lot of fun to work with.
Yeah, and it's great to get that breadth of experience as an audience member, to be able to see the different types of shows that are out there that Theater D is able to bring. So you've mentioned how you do a lot of performing, plays, musicals. One of the things we like to do with our guests here, while we're still close enough to it that it's fresher in our minds, but it will be lost to folks over time, is get the pandemic experience of what the performing arts was like back then, and why we should also be grateful that we could go see a live play this March and April of 2025 in Deerfield. So if you wouldn't mind sharing, Geoff, did you have a show you were doing that got canceled? Like, what was that experience like, having to not be able to perform for a year or two there and then being able to come back and do it again?
Yeah, oddly enough, not only was I in a show in March of 2020 when everything shut down, but it was a Theater D show. It had been my first Theater D show in, close to 20 years. I had done a couple in the first couple of years of the history of Theater D, and I can't remember exactly what years those were. But then I had not worked with Theater D for a long time, and then was in rehearsal for a play that was supposed to go up in March of 2020 called Alone Together Again. And then, like everybody else, the plug got pulled essentially the day before we were supposed to open, and everything shut down. And talking earlier about theater of the mind and bringing your imagination to bear, I think during the pandemic, of course, at first everyone thought it was going to be a month or two, so there wasn't anything going on. People were just waiting that out. But then when it became obvious that this was going to go on for more than a month or two, theater actors and theater companies started trying to find ways to do theater online, as obviously and of varying degrees of success. I think some of them worked really well, some of them not so well. But the opportunity to experience a play in a more oral setting, and let your imagination create the surroundings and imagine the places and the costumes and everything. it's similar to what our town does, but we're all in the same room. Thankfully, theater is really at its core a communal experience, and so when you can experience it with people, it's a much more gratifying experience. And so during the pandemic, we were deprived of that, and theater has come back since the pandemic, but not to the levels of participation that it enjoyed before. And even before the pandemic, the levels of the numbers of people going to live theater were not what they might have been, but they're coming back, and I hope slowly but surely we'll return to pre-pandemic levels.
Yeah. Yeah. I think a lot of things are starting to see you reaching that pre-pandemic level for in-person related stuff. I think we're finally getting back to that. Yeah, I mean, I think it's important that we not forget the value of getting together in person. And even when we first were getting back, everyone, the performers were in masks, the audience members were in masks. Like, we don't have to do that anymore. And it's just so much more fun now.
And getting back to the themes of our town, which, the stage manager says a couple of times, we don't, the oldest gravestones in the cemetery go back to the 1600s. So there have been so many people that have come out of this town, grown up in this town. Some moved away, some stayed here for their whole lives. And he says, to the best of our knowledge, nobody very remarkable. But then you learn about the people that did live most of their lives, if not all of their lives, in this town. And you experience the richness of those lives. And so part of what Thornton Wilder is telling us is the richness of a life fully lived does not depend on fame and great fortune. It's on the love you create, the love you have with your family and friends. And so life and death is covered in our town. And so parts of it are celebratory, parts of it are hilarious, parts of it are very contemplative and sad, just like life. And that's the thing. I think the lesson of the pandemic is the communal experience is vital, and that's what our town shows us.
Yeah, that's great. Yeah, just being able to experience that full spectrum of emotions that life, has. It's one thing like for Noises Off, that was a farce and it's a comedy and you're laughing the whole time, and that's always fun. But to just be able to go see a show and just experience that full spectrum of emotions is a powerful experience.
Yeah, if you're like me, my favorite pieces of / entertainment, whether it's live stage plays or movies or books or anything, are the ones that meld drama and comedy. Some people refer to them as dramedies or whatever, but that take both of those aspects of life, sadness and pleasure and happiness and laughter, and can also make you cry, that run the full spectrum of the human experience. Those are my favorite pieces. The pure, laugh-a-minute comedies, those can be good. The real heavy, unrelentingly sad dramas, those can offer something as well. But I mean, I just think life is every minute of every day is filled with both extremes of emotion, and the real wonderful pieces of art are the ones that capture that.
Yeah. Speaking of art and how you like to enjoy it, we like to ask our guests some fun questions on the show, such as, you've in particular performed in a lot. This is going to be hard. This is going to be hard for you, but you have to pick one. But we do like to know when you're performing, what have been some of the favorite shows that you've been in? And then when you take off your performer hat and you just sit back and enjoy some art, what have been some of the favorite shows you've just seen as an audience member?
Oh, that's an interesting question. Well, as an actor, of course, the iconic roles are always extremely attractive. That's why this one appealed to me so much. Many years ago, I got to do Tevye in Fiddler on the Roof, which is another actor's dream role. I've I've done one of my favorite shows is 1776, and I've done that twice. And one of the times I got to play Thomas Jefferson, and what a fun time that was, and such a fun role to do. And for many years, I did a lot of improv in the city. And one of the great things about improv is you create your own character every time. So that was a lot of fun. And it was one of the groups I performed in was centered around Tennessee Williams plays. So I got to at the time play almost all of the lead male roles in the Tennessee Williams canon. So that was a great time. I think as an audience member, my all-time favorite memory is I've moved here in 1980. And I remember in 1983, I was working in the Loop, and I was walking through the Loop to the train to go home, and I walked by the theater that a production of Othello with James Earl Jones and Christopher Plummer was playing in its pre-Broadway run. And I didn't even know it was in town at the time. And so I stopped in the box office and I go, you wouldn't happen to have any ticket for tonight? It was just by myself. And so it was like a 10th row, it was a house seat that they had available. So it was 10th row center. And I sat there and watched two of the greatest actors that have ever been on stage and on the American stage, not to mention their great film work, but just two tremendously powerful stage actors. And that was an incredible experience.
Yeah. Yeah. Well, Geoff, if listeners are not already convinced that they should come see Our Town, this is your last chance to get butts in seats for them to go to the show notes and go click the link to buy tickets. What's your final reason why people should come see Our Town?
I think first and foremost, you will be entertained. I really truly believe that this is one of the great scripts that it can be mined over and over again for wonder, and you'll be moved by it. Like I say, even if you read it years ago and you think you know it very well, come see it again, because you'll discover new things about it. And certainly if you've never seen a production of it or haven't read it, you're in for a treat. I mean, I envy you the experience of seeing this for the first time. So if you're one of those people, it's really an experience that you will remember forever.
Wow. Well, now I'm extra looking forward to opening night, which by the way, if there are still seats available, our mayor is going to be there opening night if you live in Deerfield. So everybody should try to make it out to opening night, especially.
That's awesome.
Well, Geoff, thanks so much for coming on the podcast.
Thank you, Matthew. It was a great pleasure, and I appreciate you doing this.
And that's our show. Please share this podcast to help support the work of Deerfield Theater. An even better way to support us is to go see Our Town. To purchase tickets, visit deerfieldtheater.com or click the link in the show notes. Thank you to the production staff and cast for Our Town. Please follow us on social media and subscribe to our podcast on your preferred listening app to never miss an episode. Until next time, thanks to everyone who continues to support the arts. We'll see you at the theater.